Well, sir, have you heard tell of Russell Brand?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's a bigger figure here in the UK rather than across the pond. He did he looked white as a sheet when he was doing it, but he did his like a few minutes of a video saying, "There's a few things that's going to come out about me, and I've been threatened non-stop for quite a while now, and we don't know who's behind it, but you know, all of these accusations are going to come out, and I'm sure you'll see it all in due course."
Interesting. I didn't know that he was the one who had come out to say this is what's going to be happening. That's interesting.
But it's because he got basically what happened is that Channel 4, we have like 5 main channels, and then Channel 4 did like dispatches coming out, like it's like their sort of
Breaking news,
documentary stuff, sort of, but it's like more of a documentary format.
Okay.
And like how good they are in a journalistic sense is very varied. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're shit. And I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what this category this falls into. And then they said like, oh, you know, X, Y, and Z is all going on, and like there's really dangerous people out there in the entertainment industry, and we're going to talk about one of them, and you know, blah blah blah, trying to make all of this stuff about it. And then Russell Brand's like, yeah, we're pretty sure that's going to be me. We don't know for sure, but we're pretty sure.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then so part of their marketing for it, so that's why the day before it was released, he did a video on his YouTube channel letting people know it's probably going to be him.
And how did people respond to the video? What were the comments in the video like?
I don't know, actually. I'll look at it quick. I'll look it up. People are I know people's opinions on it are quite divided because of the kind of stuff like, see, he used to be in the mainstream media, right? And then that's where he made his name and all that. And now since he's left that and he's very much working anti-establishment and anti-mainstream media, there's a lot of people conspiracy theorizing about it.
Oh, interesting. There's a conspiracy theory about everything.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, is that if he has done these heinous things that he's told about, that doesn't mean that the stuff he said about mainstream media isn't true, but it doesn't mean that he's just because they're coming for him now because he's speaking out against them. It doesn't mean that he didn't do it either. So
it's the whole thing about like, if you do a bad thing, you're just a bad person in general, and everybody should stop listening to everything you say. Like, if he did these things, I think they were at a time where he was very actively involved in a deep addiction.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like addicts can always be held accountable for their actions, not to excuse anything that he has done or not done, but it doesn't take away from any of the good works he did just because he did shitty things, right? Like when talk about Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, they did some terrible, terrible shit, but they also produced some really great content that does it. Yeah. The two things are not.
And that's the thing is that the media, I think, are going to make this into like a political divide again. And it's going to be like, if you listen to Russell Brand, then you're as good as a sex offender, and you're a Republican, a conservative, you're a conspiracy theorist, QAnon. That's what they're going to make it all about.
Well, a lot of people called him like a leftist darling, and now it's like they're making it sound like he makes the entire left movement look bad. It's like, no, he's still just one person. He doesn't represent anyone other than himself.
And he's like, if he's done these things, that makes him an awful shithead, and like he should have his day in court, and he should, you know, the victims should get the justice that they deserve.
Absolutely, but that doesn't
mean that anything he said is untrue or wrong because he's a sex offender.
Correct. Did you? Okay, I know this is same topic, different person. I know you don't know Danny Masterson because you didn't have that 70s show there.
But he's been
30 years he was given. And that I feel like is an unprecedented amount. I don't know if they're trying to make an example out of him or it was just for show and it's not actually going to happen, because 30 years is a lot for what the United States, like what they usually hand down for that type of crime.
Yeah, this is the stuff that I'm finding quite weird with some of this, which is that they've never been tough on sex crimes before. In my opinion, if people see my TikTok content, I think it's the worst kind of crime you could do against somebody. is sexually abused them in some way. And I think that there needs to be tougher punishment on it. I find it weird who they're selecting to do that to.
Absolutely. Like Danny Masterson, there have been people who have perpetrated worse crimes and have gotten 6 months. Like there was that kid several years ago. Oh, what was his name? Can't remember his name, Brock. And he assaulted this girl at a party, this young woman after a college party. Two guys found her. What he had done to her brought them to tears. And he got 6 months because he's a good swimmer. And it would be a shame to ruin his swimming career.
That's fucking awful.
But then Danny Masterson does, I mean, essentially the same crime. He gets 30 years. Like they need to be tough consistently.
And it's historical crime where you can be pretty sure that at the time he did them, people discouraged the victims coming forward because of like, well, he's a promising swimmer, he's a promising actor. Think about all these people's jobs.
Well, and apparently with the Danny Masterson thing, because he was big, he's a Scientologist, and there were people who were going to be speaking out against him, and the church was like, don't. And they were trying to convince other members of the church to convince the victims to retract their statements.
Yeah. Very common. Catholicism did that for a long time. And I think, and then there's also that, like, well, there's hardly ever conviction happens, and then you got to go through hell. So, like, that's usually a big selling point for the victim not to come forward, is because they have to relive the crime that was done against them and the trauma day in, day out for months, and then they don't go to prison anyway.
So Brock, I can't remember his last name, and I don't want to accuse somebody else. The victim. A young woman named Chanel wrote a book about it, and she was talking about not only what happened, but how she was treated in court. And he just had to sit there. If he didn't want to testify, he didn't have to testify, but she had to answer for every decision she made. Why did she go? Why was she wearing that dress? Why was she drinking? Why was she like every tiny little thing she did that would have been insignificant if not had it not been for the assault, she had to account for. And they were trying to paint her as this
as asking for it, you know?
Because she just happened to be at a party with her sister and had a few drinks.
And then the other thing that I think is really sinister about some of this, okay, like I don't know about what Masterson is up to behind the scenes. I don't know what he gets involved with or anything like that, politically or anything. But with Russell Brand, right, because he does so much anti-establishment stuff through his YouTube channel, and it's now really big. I mean, he's got 6.6 million subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah, in a very short space of time. And I found that the first year he was doing it, he was doing pretty good work, like through the pandemic and stuff. But then I found that after the first 12 months, he started getting into the tinfoil hat stuff, started getting involved in more of the right-wing conspiracy nonsense stuff. And then I just kind of disengaged from it then. I was like, no, this is the Russell Brand I know. He's a lunatic. And
everybody runs out of content eventually.
Yeah. And then, but the thing is he is so successful working against the mainstream media, which I think is a good thing, that and showing them for what they are, that they're coming for him now. Which I think the most sinister thing about that is that there must be fucking hundreds of people in the entertainment industry that is up to shit like that, and they have all of that on them. Like, all of these criminals are doing these absolute worst crimes you could possibly imagine, against anybody. They're doing it against men, women, children, animals, and it's being kept quiet until
they'll just save it for leverage.
Yeah. And then now you're finding 20 or 30 years later after the fact. Like, what can you do in court when it's 20 or 30 years later?
That's the thing. Like, when I saw very briefly the news article, these allegations come from between 2006 and 2013. So they're like 10 years ago. They're old. Why now? Like, what is it? What is it that he has said or that you think he's going to say that you've got to distract everybody?
Yeah, and then just think about all of those victims of not just him, but from other criminals in the entertainment industry, whose lives have been absolutely fucking ruined, and they were discouraged from coming forward for whatever reason.
Well, look at Corey Feldman. Do you know who Corey Feldman is?
Yeah.
Okay, so he, as a child, when he was a child actor of 13, 14, he was trying to bring light to the abuse that was happening in the industry, and he was ousted for it. They made fun of him. He was like, he couldn't find any work. And now, all these years later, like, he should be prancing around with a big "I was right" shirt on, because it's like his career was destroyed, his reputation was destroyed, and he was right the entire time. Everything he said was bang on.
Yeah. And then that's why I think the story really is in this Russell Brand thing, that like, absolutely, if he's done nefarious shit, he should be in court. And he should have to face his victims. But then at the same time as doing that, you can hold both these things in your head at the same time. Why now? Like, this is so fucking weird. And how many other people are they protecting?
Have you seen, there's been, I don't know if this came out at the time, but now there's this video surfacing of some guy talking about how he had like a homosexual relationship with Barack Obama and they smoked like.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, but also again, why now? He hasn't been the president in, in 8 years. Like, what is it now that needs to come out and be distracted?
And apparently with Obama, like, he had letters, I think it was to Michelle or maybe another woman at the time. I can't remember who it was, but talking about his homoerotic fantasies with these men that he knew. But
they bring it up now like it's a big gotcha. Who cares?
Yeah. Who gives a shit? He's been president. Like,
yeah, and whatever anything he did doesn't really affect anybody other than himself and whoever he was with. Unlike when they bring up the like why now with the Russell Brand, that should have surfaced as soon as there was evidence of it, solid evidence of it, not conjecture.
Yeah, and back then when the evidence still existed, there was still evidence there that you could collect. You know,
and you think after some time, I imagine, and again, this is just pulling this out of my ass, but a victim of that type of assault, if they've not come forward with it at the time, they likely didn't want to come forward with it, or they've done the work and gone through therapy to get themselves to a better place with it, and then had to have it brought up by not themselves a decade later. That's now you're assaulting that person all over again in a different way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like, you're trying to give like, yes, the victims need their day in court and they need their justice, but if they haven't sought it out for themselves, then perhaps they didn't want to go down that route of having to relive it over and over again, and now that's being forced to happen.
Yeah. And now it's the case of like, well, you made accusations back in the day, so you have to come forward now, and like you're going to get coerced into doing it. You've already been coerced into doing things you don't like, and these fucking creatures in the media are at it again. You know, these vile journalists. I'm very interested to watch it. This dispatch is about 45 minutes long, so I'm going to give it a watch this coming week. And
I have not heard anything of it. I don't know if it'll be airing here.
Yeah, it's on Channel 4 here, so I don't even know.
We have like 800 channels. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, well, it's one of our terrestrial ones. So we've got BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4, and Channel 5.
Okay.
And then, like, because BBC One and Two, they don't have any adverts. They're owned by the state, basically. They're supposed to be impartial, but they're obviously not. And we pay a tax every month, a TV license fee, so that it's bullshit.
Interesting.
Nobody likes it. It's absolute bullshit. That. It's like £15.
We have what kind of sounds like what we have is like PBS, which is Public Broadcasting System, and they'll play these amazing documentaries, but if the documentary is 2 hours long, it'll take you 3.5 hours to watch it, because they'll sit there for 10 minutes every like 30 minutes to be like, you need to donate now and we'll send you this VHS recording of this.
Oh no.
If you donate $1,000, we'll send you a mug that has
whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, but they do have some good stuff on it. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to watch that. But I mean, it's interesting that I know that Russell Brand is like we know him across the pond, but they've made it as big of a deal here. But here it's been very much like, I only just read about it yesterday. It's been very much like, oh, the left darling is going to be in some hot water. Like, it's the right is kind of using it as a gotcha, or a political gotcha, instead of, oh, this one person, regardless of their political affiliation, did some terrible shit.
That's interesting, because in the UK, our lefty papers are coming out with, well, I've been doing this for about 9 months now, that he's a right-wing conspiracy theorist.
No, they're still, and then now, because it was my husband who told me about it yesterday, he said that he was like the left darling for the longest time, and now the left is trying to cancel him because of these things he did a decade and a half ago when he was a hardcore drug addict.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not an excuse. He should be made to pay for his crimes.
But I'm looking at the comments here on his video. There's 31,000 comments, and yeah, so far it's quite interesting because you know what I said, people will end up being one side or the other when actually both things can be true, and this is what we need to remember in this: both things can be true. Somebody said you don't get in trouble for lying, you get in trouble for telling the truth.
Oh Christ.
I'm so sorry this happened to you, Russell. It's despicable. I stand with you, Russell. As soon as I heard this, I knew they were just trying to shut you up as you're one of the few out there brave enough to speak the truth.
Come on, just because
he says shit you agree with, it doesn't mean that he's a good person. Like,
that's
by
why I think
default.
people try to base their personalities around other larger than life personalities. So then they feels like, oh, if Russell Brand is a bad person, then I must be a bad person because I like Russell Brand. When you can have these things not being connected.
Yeah.
You can still agree with his politics, but not agree with his actions.
Yeah. Like, I've never had much time for him. I always think he's a bit of a wally. He's not that funny. He's like, was it my partner said earlier? He's like, he's not as good looking or as clever as he likes to think he is.
His delivery, I saw him. He used to have a late night show.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was called, but I watched a few episodes of it depending on who the guest was. But I found he was not the best interviewer because he rarely let people finish their thought.
Very nice.
He would just kind of jump in and pipe in. And in a couple of episodes, he set up these intentional gotchas to create this drama where it probably didn't need to.
He has an interesting rhetorical trick that he does to try and make himself sound clever, which is he starts acting like a thesaurus. And he does this more when he's talking to cleverer people, but he'll say one word and then he'll say a different word that's like similar to that first word, and they'll get increasingly more complicated. He'll do it like 3 or 4 words he'll do it for. So, it'd be like, what a bright day. We say like, oh, what a bright or luminous or happy day or something like that. I bet you would do it. Yes,
no, I have seen him do that.
Yeah.
I've seen him do that.
Yeah, he's always doing it. So somebody else, that's a long couple to read that. I'm so sorry you're in this situation, Russell. We all know the truth behind it. Stay strong. I'll pray for you. You're a warrior for all of us.
Do you know the truth behind it, though?
Exactly. How would you know the truth? Like I said, he never had good judgment. Like,
he knows the truth. The women involved know the truth. All these people are just, if it comes out that it's true, they'll be going back in a week and deleting all those comments and saying, I always knew he was shady.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody else is like, we're with you, Russell. Stay strong and always aware, Russell. We are with you. When you're over the target, you're catching flack. Like, it's best not to have an opinion on the truth of something because you don't know.
Exactly. I hope it's not true, but if it is, you need to pay for your crimes.
Yeah, and the thing is like with the kind of life that he's led, and like in his little video, he kept talking about promiscuity and being young and promiscuous, and it's almost like he's trying to hide behind it as a defense.
But it's a weird take, though, because you can be promiscuous
and still be a shit.
Exactly. Just because you're sleeping around a lot doesn't mean the women that you're doing it with are the same. That doesn't excuse anything. If you went out over the course of a month and got laid twice a day, it just takes that one person to have said no, and it doesn't matter how promiscuous or not you are.
Exactly. And then I knew somebody who'd read his book years ago, and I haven't read his book myself. It's called My Bookie Book. This is autobiography. He wrote it like back in I think it was released about 2010 or 2009. And my girlfriend at the time was reading it, and then she says that, I don't know if it's just her interpretation of it or if he specifically said this literally, but he basically had non-consensual sex with a girl because they would, like, he basically plied her with drugs and got her all fucked up and then had sex with her. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like
that's
rape to
the
me.
admission of a crime. Yeah, it's the admission of a crime.
Yeah, but I haven't read those words myself, so I don't know how accurate her interpretation of it was. But that, like, whether you know that it's rape or not and that you think it's consensual doesn't make it consensual sex just because you think it is. Like,
Especially if you're plying somebody with alcohol. But it's a scary thing that there are some people out there who don't see the difference. And we talked before about that Spanish Big Brother where they showed this contestant her assault. There was another show, I can't remember where I can't remember if it was like New Zealand or the UK. I can't remember. People in it had accents. That's all I know. But it was the same situation where they were in a house. I don't think it was a Big Brother show, but this guy was trying to get into this room. This woman had too much to drink, so she's like, I'm going to go for a lie down. She went, closed the door, and this guy kept trying to get into the room, and people kept trying to stop him. And he was like, no, I'm just going to get in there. I'm going in. Even the producers of the show had to physically restrain him from getting into the room, and he couldn't see that he was doing anything wrong. He just couldn't. Yeah, he just couldn't grasp that if he were to go into that room and have his way with this woman being passed out, that was not consensual.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like, imagine, he knew he was being recorded when he was doing it. Imagine the type of shit he does when he doesn't know, when he's not being recorded.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people talk about that on, well, I say a lot, but like a lot of this content on TikTok gets censored, doesn't it, and throttled. But there's a feminist creator on there, and she's talking about the kind of stuff she found out when she was a humanitarian aid worker. And like, I think she was out in Syria at the start of their conflict. And she's like, the women there are beaten up and raped all the time, like in the refugee camps and stuff. Just like these blokes, just the first target is women and children. Because it's like, this popped in my mind because of what you said about like, what does he do when he's not being filmed? And that's exactly it. Like, they know there's no comeuppance. There's no police there to stop them from what they're doing. A lot of these women are traveling without escort, basically. Like, they don't have a male family member to help keep them safe. And then so these men just see it like, well, I can do what I want then, can't I? No one's gonna
I saw this video. I forget where, I don't know where it was, but there was two women who were walking unescorted they had no male escort. And there were probably 100 to 150 men just mobbing around them as they were walking and kind of yelling at them and giving them shit for being unescorted.
Oh, there was something similar happened in Germany. This was pre-pandemic. You know, when Germany took in like a whole bunch of asylum seekers from the Syrian conflict, they took in like 1 million or something. And then a lot of certain types of these crimes went up. And there was an incident where a couple of women were outside one of the train stations, and they literally got mobbed like that by about 100, 150 guys. And then they were like pulling at their clothes and stuff and trying to grab them and everything. Yeah.
Jesus. There was a Twitch streamer. She was live streaming, and this guy assaulted her in a subway as she was live streaming.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's fucked up. It's so fucked up. I made a video. I made a TikTok the other day, and I was walking. I was on my evening walk. My earbuds were in, and someone had commented that, like, "Oh, brave that you're walking alone with your earbuds in, not being able to hear around you." And I was like, because of where I live, like I live in a really safe environment, I've never even questioned it. And that, like, and I know now I've been spoiled where we live now, because where we were before, if I walked at night, I always made sure I had my dog with me and I didn't have my earbuds in, and I was more alert because of where we were. But I've gotten so spoiled of where I am now that I don't even think of it.
Yeah. I wouldn't, like, even where I live now, I wouldn't walk around with my headphones in, like, at full volume. I don't know how people do that.
So it'll be interesting to see how this Russell Brand plays out.
Yeah.
He's gotten ahead of it, which is going to change the dynamic of what comes next, because he's already trying to skirt the issue by talking about his promiscuity, which is completely irrelevant, because you may have been, but that doesn't mean the women were.
And how's he going to remember it anyway to defend himself? Like, if you're taking substances at the level that he was for so long, there's going to be huge parts of his life he can't remember.
Absolutely, yeah. And there'll be parts that he'll have a very skewed perception of. It's like when Aziz Ansari was accused, he's like, I thought we were having a good time. I didn't know. Like, there was a very skewed perception that Russell Brand may have thought they were having a good time, but under the right drugs, he probably would have thought anything.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because you don't have the best judgment anyway, particularly back in those days. Like, the societal understanding of consent, it was nowhere close to what we understand it now. Like, there wasn't the discussions about it. Blokes didn't talk to each other about it. We just knew that, like, well, if she says no, then you just leave her alone. Like, if she brushes you off, just leave her.
There's always been such a skewed perception of that, though, and it's so frustrating that it's, well, we play hard to get, so then men have to work for it, and it's so that fucks things up. And then when you throw in stardom into that, where he was in a position where at the time nobody was saying no to him. Whatever he wanted to do, he could get. So if a woman were to say no, then that was probably just another, like, you're just kidding, or it's another challenge to face, or do you know who I am? Not to say that he did those things, but there's that. It's like no one stopped Michael Jackson from hanging his baby over a balcony. Because it's Michael Jackson. So you just, okay. And nobody stopped Tom Petty and Chris Cornell and other stars from getting all these different mixes and cocktails of drugs, because the doctors just wanted to give them to their patients, and then they have these accidental overdoses that should have been blamed on their doctors. So there's a lot of that, I think, that goes into it, where they've not set them up to say that you're not infallible just because you can make people laugh, or you can act or sing or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I wondered if there is some kind of specific support or education or something that these famous men can get, like, or that they should get, because it's like Bill Burr's done a really good joke about it before with Schwarzenegger, that, like, in Schwarzenegger's mind, like, you know, when he has sex with his maid, cheats on his wife, and has a kid with his maid, it's kind of like he put, like, so Bill Burr's joke puts you in Schwarzenegger's mind, like, you know, like, well, of course he could do that at the time. Nobody tells him no, and he's like, why can't I fuck my maid in my own bed? And, like, I just love
the thing.
Bill
That's
Burr.
The thing. Nobody tells them no.
Yeah, and, like, what I liked with the way that Bill Burr did it, he did it in a really just such a clever way that would actually get you thinking about that and putting yourself in his shoes, not to excuse anything these people have done, but, you know, I'm a psychologist. I want to find out why they've done it. And that's what I think is going to be quite interesting with Russell Brand, is figuring out that, like, okay, if these accusations are true, like, to what, it could even be to what extent are they true? Like, how much of it is playing out like each party thinks it does or did?
And how much of it was based on his skewed perception of things at the time, with his fame, the drugs, one of the biggest challenges I think a lot of people face is that there's that whole concept that consent can't be withdrawn. She may have been, you know, enthusiastic at the beginning and then withdrawn that consent, but did it stop there?
Yeah. So it's just interesting how people will always understand withdrawing consent in any other scenario until it comes to having sex with somebody. And
it's also the way that some men don't understand consent until they get hit on by another man, and then they understand. Then they get it. Because I don't think schools do a good enough job, or a job at all, about teaching young kids about consent. Like, that conversation needs to start really early, when you teach them about their periods and all the other biological functions that they have. That time there needs to be conversations about consent. I know Canada doesn't do it, and recently, I think it was last year, I saw some articles about some different states that are specifically not teaching consent. They just teach abstinence only, so there's no talk about anything else, which is just setting all those kids up for failure.
Yeah, totally. Because kids would just want to try out the thing they're not allowed to.
And a lot of parents don't, I'm going to shit talk parents, and I hate doing that, but I read an Am I the Asshole post where a woman was in a grocery store, and this 5 or 6 year old kid was just running around the store. And this woman has some former trauma and doesn't like to be touched by strangers, any strangers. And this kid came up and started touching her, and she told the kid, please don't touch me. And then she was in another aisle, and that same kid came and, like, wrapped his arms around her waist. And then when she kind of, like, freaked out a little bit, the mother of this kid started giving her shit. He's just a boy. He's just a kid. But you have to teach your children they can't touch people. Just like you teach your kid, or you should be teaching your kid, people aren't allowed to touch you without your consent. If someone touches you and you inappropriately, you tell me, you should also be teaching your child not to touch other people. He's a kid now, but he's not going to be in a few years from now. Like, stop forgetting that you're raising future adults, and you need to teach them those lessons early, so that they have them throughout their life.
Yeah. I was on the bus the other day, and there's a kid like sitting behind me, kicking the back of my chair. The mother, like I was near the back of the bus, and the fucking mother was at the front of the bus, just chilling out with her pram.
You could have scooped that kid up under your arm and been gone before she even realized he was.
Yeah, I could have gone out the fire exit at the back or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the way the kid was sitting, like, was that so the seats above the wheel arch, so like those seats were a bit higher, and then so she probably thought that, oh well, I can see my kid there, then it's all right. But the kid was lying down most of the time, so you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. And she wasn't looking at a kid probably about half the time that they're on the bus anyway.
And you said she had a pram, so what would she do if she would be able to watch her kid get kidnapped? She would, she would yell for somebody to stop you, but that would be that.
Yeah, exactly. It's fucking ridiculous. And then I'm just sitting there with this kid just kicking the back of my chair, and I'm like, like, oh. Jesus. And then it took a lot of willpower not to sort of say something to the mum when I got off, because it fucking really pushed my buttons. That did.
Well, I mean, you don't think it shouldn't be a stretch to teach your kid not to act up like that in public.
Exactly.
And I don't know if maybe like my parents were stricter, but if I did that type of shit when I was on a bus, oh man, my mom would have dragged me off the bus by my ear.
Yeah, and I remember talking to someone once about parenting and things, because I was just kind of like, okay, so why do some parents get so exhausted by it and other parents don't? Like, some parents, it really takes a lot out of them to be parents. And then my mate said, well, yes, because we're actually trying to parent the kids. So when you're trying to engage a kid all the time and trying to tell them to do something or not do something, it's like that takes a lot out of you, and parenting's hard. And he said, but like his brother, he's like, he finds parenting easy because he doesn't do fuck all and his kids are really badly behaved.
That sums it up. Well, so we went camping. And the campsite we were at, we went the week before school started, which is probably why it was so busy, but there were like pockets of kids everywhere around us. And I think it would also benefit some parents to teach their children inside voices. Like even though I've never, I don't have kids, I've never wanted to have kids, I am very much that, yes, kids should be allowed to be kids. Let them play, let them experience, let them do all the kid things, but they don't need to yell all the time. Like, we were sitting at like maybe 2 or 3 campsites over and trying to sit around the fire, just kind of hanging out. And it was like the site that we picked, we didn't have a choice in this, but it was a radio-free site, which usually means everyone just shut the fuck up and be quiet. But we were hearing kids the entire time. Like, one kid told this very engaging story about turkey vultures, and the moment he was finished, he went, "Does anyone want to hear that story again?" And I was like, I'm 3 campsites over. I didn't want to hear it the first time.
Yeah,
they're sitting across the table from you. Just.
I think as well that those people with kids like that, I think they're probably like it themselves. And then that's why those kids are like that, because they have to compete for attention.
They just figure, like, we're camping, we're not at home, just go be feral.
But that's not fair, though, on people around them. Like,
no, and like we were hearing it from, and like we, with our dogs, right, when they start barking, we immediately are like, shh, the whole park doesn't need to hear you barking. The whole park also doesn't need to hear your kids screaming. They don't need to hear stories about turkey vultures. They need to hear, there was a guy 2 campsites over with a guitar and could barely sing. I don't want to hear that either. Yeah. So it's just sound travels when you're outside.
Well, we've got we've got neighbors each side. We live in detached houses, but there's like about 6 feet between each house. And on one side, we've got a really nice family, and they just they're quite quiet like us. And they don't have loads of parties or anything. They're pretty chilled out, really easy to talk to. And on the other side, man, I have a thing against the husband, I think. He's one of those people that, when you meet each other, right? And then your hackles are up and you just want to punch him in the face. That's my neighbor that side. Like,
so you're Zool and your neighbor is everybody else.
Yeah. I don't literally want to punch him in the face. I'm not an aggressive person, but it's just like, I just feel like like whenever I meet him, I'm just like, oh God, it's you.
You just don't like him. You don't have to like everybody.
No, I don't like how loud he listens to his music in the garden. I don't like how
Mm.
he talks to his wife. I don't like how he lets his
Oh,
dogs fucking bark all the time. And it's just, and I don't like the way he talks to me either.
no, so he's just a dick. You just don't like him in general.
Yeah.
We are very lucky with our neighbors. Like we are we chat more with one set of neighbors than we do the other, just because our dogs tend to run alongside the fence with each other. But they, even if they listen to music in their garden, it's not aggressively loud. And there's another guy who lives on one street over, but all our backyards tend to bump into each other. And if he's going to have a party, he will let us know, like, to make it a little bit loud. So we get warning.
Yeah.
But there is one family and their dog. So our house backs onto a ravine. There's another street that is, I guess, perpendicular to ours, also backs onto the ravine. And they have a dog that they tie up out front, and the dog barks incessantly. And the dog is like Houdini. This dog gets loose of her tie out constantly. She has been found all over the place. The first time I saw her running around the ravine. She's a white dog. I could see her running in through the ravine. I thought she was escaped. So we brought her into our backyard, and then the owner showed up. And then the first time we're like, oh, that must have been just an honest mistake that their dog got out. It happens constantly. And this dog is a menace. My house has 2 dogs. My neighbor has a dog. My other neighbor has a dog. And this idiot will get loose from her leash and come running back and forth along our backyard, setting off all the dogs.
Up.
As soon as they hear her bark, all the dogs get wound up because this dog is out. And they do it when they're not even home. Like one day I was walking down past their street and I saw them come out with the dog and open the car door. So in my head, I was like, the whole family's going out. They're taking the dog with them. So I go for my little walk. I come back. I see the car drive off. And then I keep walking and the dog is tied up outside. There's nobody home. They've opened up the garage door, put down a bowl of water, and let the dog out. So there's no one there to stop the dog from barking. There's no one there to collect the dog when she finally gets loose of her leash, which happens constantly. They just leave their dogs outside. And technically it's not illegal because they've left her with shelter and water. So I can't even.
Oh my God. They just
can't even carry them out. Oh, I can't even wrap them out.
Yeah. Man, anybody could walk in their garage and nick stuff. Was it empty?
They could take stuff. They could take the dog. I mean, that dog will follow anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a good-looking dog, so it's a good-looking dog.
Yeah.
But she amps everybody up. As soon as the dog comes out, and we hear one bark, every dog knows that dog's bark, and we're like, now I got to go inside. And they walk past our houses. So the mom will walk the dog to school to pick up the kids and then walk back. So we know at like 4:05, mom's going to be walking over, and at like 4:20, she's walking back. And we have to keep, like, my neighbor and I will intentionally try to keep the dogs at the back of the property so they don't see the dog walking. Oh, all hell breaks loose.
Do you think these people seem oblivious that they're annoying?
I don't know if anyone's ever actually told them knock it off, which is surprising because 2 houses over, there's a neighbor who gets up in everybody's business. Yeah. I'm surprised she wouldn't have told them.
I do, like, the only reason why I haven't said something to my neighbor is because I don't think my partner would want me to. Like, she wouldn't want me to call something. So
you also have to wonder how it's going to land. If he's the type of person who would be like, oh, sorry, mate, I didn't know I was being a cunt, then okay, fine, address it. But it doesn't sound like he's that guy. So where is it going to get you other than just...
But then I've said my piece then. I'm like, yeah, dude, can you turn your music down? I'm trying to relax in the garden here.
I'm sure you could do that easily.
I don't know. I can't remember if I said this on the podcast once, but the way he talks to his wife, man, like, he was in the garden, just chill out, listen to his loud music. And then she was like building something in the garden. I don't know what it was. I just heard their conversation and she was having a bit of trouble with it. And she asked him for some help to put it together. And he just went, well, you have to tie a screw, don't you? And she was like, yeah. He goes like, yeah, lefty loosey, righty tighty, go on. And then, yeah. And then she was like, look, that's what I'm doing. And she was like, I just wanted your help. And then he's like, yeah, but I just wanted one fucking day. I've got off work. I want one fucking day where I don't have to fucking do anything.
Jesus Christ, grow up, man. It's 5 minutes. Just help your wife for 5 fucking minutes.
Right. And then
the time it took you to complain about it, you could have just done it.
Yeah, this is what he always sounds like. And then just hearing his voice just winds me up.
Oh,
And
his
like,
poor wife.
yeah, she's a really nice person. I don't know why they're together.
Do they have kids?
Yeah, but I think he's got kids with a previous wife, and then they've got a kid together, I think. I'm not sure.
That mm.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I feel if she's going to tolerate that treatment for herself, that's one thing. But she's teaching her kids. This is what relationships are like. This is how dads talk to moms. This is how moms like.
Yeah, I don't know if they have kids living with them. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I've ever seen them. I've seen a couple of kids around before, but they've got two dogs, cockapoos, lovely dogs. They just bark a lot without any being told to stop. And they've got 3 cats. So I'm still wondering if that's why they're together, is the dogs and the cats. But like, they're fucking adorable. Cats have got Maine Coons. Yeah.
Aww.
And one of them.
I get it. Staying together for the kids. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where goes it?
Yeah. One of them got out the house the other day, apparently, because they were it got into our garden, and then all of our cats were on alert, and Sansa ended up, because so the woman came around, she was like, oh, can I get my cat's escaped and got in the back garden, she's a house cat, can I come get him back? So he was a boy cat. And now we think Sansa's smitten with next door's cat, because they were in the either side of the catio fence, just sniffing noses and hanging out, while all the other 4 girls in our house were like, it's a
Sansa
boy.
has a boyfriend.
Yeah, Sansa's got a boyfriend.
Have you seen that video I saw on TikTok of this cat keeps getting out of the house and going into the neighbor's garden? And the owner of the cat is like threatening to call the police on the other house owner, calling him a cat pervert. And he's like, I'm not trying to lure your cat into my house. Your cat just keeps coming over here. He's calling him a cat pervert. And he's like, just keep your cat inside then. Yeah. Be better at keeping your cat in the house.
Yeah. Let cats go wherever they want. I'll have to go away and watch Russell Brand's Dispatches.
Please report back. I'm curious.
Oh, well, I'll find out if any nefarious stuff actually happened, or is it inconclusive, or was it nothing?
I think it's a little bit of all of it.
Yeah. The thing is I wouldn't put it past him. And I think most men are capable of doing something, especially if they don't realize they're doing it. So.
Yeah. Very curious indeed, sir.
Fade to black.
Fuck face.
Oh, yeah.